I knew today wasn't going to end pretty the moment I saw 5 HOA inspectors, 1 lawyer, and a damn bulldozer idling at my front gate. I set my coffee down, walked inside, racked my shotgun, and stepped back out. I'd already measured the distance from my door to my trigger. Whoever crossed that threshold was about to become a message the HOA would never forget. That was the first 15 seconds of my morning, and it only went downhill from there. The sun wasn't even all the way up yet, just brushing the tops of my cedars with that pale Texas gold. A quiet morning, the kind I usually protect with both hands. But quiet never lasts long when folks who have never fixed a fence in their life decide they can own yours. 5 white HOA SUVs were lined up like rental cars at an airport. Same make, same model, same overconfident parking job. All of them had their doors open and hazards blinking, like they figured creating a scene would give them authority. The inspectors were already out, matching neon vests, matching clipboards, matching expressions that said they'd practiced this in front of a mirror. The lawyer wore a suit far too fancy for a dirt road. Every time the breeze kicked up dust, he twitched like somebody'd slapped him. But the real problem was the bulldozer. A big yellow Komatsu diesel, engine thumping steady, bucket raised just enough to make a point. That machine wasn't here to talk. It was here to make an example out of my Keat. Funny thing is, I had the same idea. I stood on the porch a moment, letting him take a good look at me. Old denim shirt, boots worn down to the stitching, shotgun held low, barrel pointed at the dirt. I wasn't aiming at a soul, but the look on their faces told me the sound of that shotgun racking was still echoing around in their skulls. The man in charge, or the man who thought he was, stepped forward, thick around the middle, shiny sunglasses, voice too high for somebody playing boss. "Sir," he called, "you need to step away from the gate. This is an authorized enforcement action under Willow Ridge Development Ordinance." I cut him off with one raised hand. "Son," I said, in the calmest voice God ever gave a man, "if that bulldozer so much as coughs in my direction, you and I are about to have a conversation you won't enjoy." He blinked, hard, glanced at the lawyer, then at the bulldozer operator. A kid looked barely old enough to rent a car. The boy stiffened, knuckles whitening around the controls. Behind them, my windmill creaked slow and steady. Cattle bawled out in the pasture, waiting on feed. Everything normal and peaceful, except for the little army trespassing on my dirt. The inspector waved his clipboard like it was a badge. "We have jurisdiction to protect community safety and enforce..." Again, I raised my hand. "I've lived on this land 58 years, I said. "My daddy lived on it before me. My granddaddy broke the first soil here with a mule and a prayer. And you're standing on private property waving a clipboard like it's gonna scare me?" The lawyer stepped up, cleared his throat. "Mr. Drake, your non-compliance has reached a level that requires immediate intervention. You've ignored notices, rejected community policies, and..." My eyes drifted past him, past the SUVs, past the bulldozer, to the spot where, 3 days earlier, I'd found the first red survey stake hammered into my land. 3 days. That's all it took for this circus to roll in. And they had no earthly idea what those 72 hours meant, or what they'd already set in motion. I tightened my grip on the shotgun, not threatening, just steady, a Texas man's version of crossing his arms. "You boys are awful confident," I said, "for folks who haven't even asked permission to be here." Silence rolled across the fence line. Dust drifted between us like lazy snow. I stepped off the porch, slow and steady, gravel crunching under my boots. "If any of y'all want to understand how we do things out here," I said, "I suggest you stick around." I stopped at the gate, ran my hand across the old cedar plank, warm under the morning sun. "This," I said quietly, "is where it all went wrong." And with that, I let the story fall back 3 days, to the moment of the first crack in the piece appeared beneath my boots. 3 days earlier, the morning had been quiet enough for me to hear my boots creak. That kind of quiet doesn't happen often anymore, not with subdivisions crawling closer every year like slow-moving brush fires. I was walking the south fence line, checking for storm damage. A limb had come down the night before, oak, heavy, old as sin, and it had stretched the barbed wire like it was pulling taffy. Nothing unusual, just ranch work, predictable, honest, peaceful, but halfway through tightening the wire, I spotted something that didn't belong. A sliver of red, too bright, too plastic, too clean for Texas dirt. I stepped closer, Sure enough, a survey stake. WBR 15, bright red top, pressed into the ground hard enough to leave a perfect collar of disturbed soil around the base. I crouched, ran a thumb across it, still warm from the sun, still sharp at the edges, fresh, real fresh. Somebody had hammered it in within the last 12 hours. My land's been in my family almost 60 years. Every inch of it, every slope of dirt, every stubborn mesquite root. I know them like scars on my own hands. And what I was looking at right then? That wasn't an accident. It was a message. I stood, eyes scanning the tree line. Wind rustled leaves the wrong way. Shadows didn't feel right. Something in the air told me I wasn't alone. I followed the fence line another 30 yards, another stake, then another, all in a perfect line, like someone had been marking out a blueprint only they'd been allowed to see. 15 stakes total. I counted them twice just to be sure. Not a single tire track nearby, not a single footprint I could identify. Whoever did this knew how to hide things, or they didn't care if I found them. The second option worried me more. I pulled one stake up slowly, felt the soil crumble, smelled the chemical tint of factory paint. Cheap materials, mass-ordered, used in rapid surveys when time mattered more than accuracy. Something HOA developers use when they're trying to push a project through before anyone can complain. I rolled that stake in my hand a long moment. My daddy used to tell me, "Son, if you ever find something on your land you didn't put there, it means somebody thinks they own a piece of you." I thought about that while staring at the red survey stake, its paint catching the sunlight like a flare. Then something else caught my eye. The latch on the south gate, rust scratched aside, fresh metal showing through. Someone had tested it, hard, and that's when the cold weight settled in my chest. Not fear, recognition. See, trouble on a ranch doesn't come like in the movies, all noise and lights. Real trouble comes quiet, sneaks in wearing clean shoes, leaves signs subtle enough most folks never notice. But I noticed. I always notice. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the trail cam feed, scrolled back to just before dawn. Headlights. A big black SUV rolling slow, too slow, nosing up to my gate like it was sniffing for weakness. Somebody got out, pressed the latch, checked the hinges, walked the fence line like they were inspecting merchandise. Then they left, calm, deliberate, like they planned to come back. I closed the phone, held the stake in my hand. Those 15 pieces of red plastic weren't mistakes. They were footsteps, breadcrumbs, warnings folks like me aren't supposed to ignore. And Lord knows, I didn't. I stared out across the land my granddaddy plowed and whispered to myself, "This ain't gonna end well." I wasn't wrong. By the time the sun was fully up, that red stake in my hand felt heavier than wood ought to. Not because of its weight, plastic doesn't weigh much, but because of what it meant. Folks don't hammer survey stakes into another man's land by accident. And they damn sure don't test his gate before sunrise out of curiosity. So, I wiped the dirt from my boots, climbed into my truck, and headed to the county office. It's a small building, old bricks, flickering fluorescent lights, smells like dust and old paper. A place where time moves slower, but trouble tends to arrive fast. The clerk on duty was a woman named Marlene. Known her 20 years. She knows every rancher, every land number, every boundary dispute going back to the 70s. She gave me a look the moment I stepped inside. "Tom, you look like a man chewing on bad news." I set the stake on the counter. "Just checking something," I said. "Anything come through on parcel 7B? Her eyebrows rose. Parcel numbers aren't something strangers use. She knew right then something serious was cooking. She typed slow, squinting at the screen the way folks do when they already expect something to be wrong. Then her face changed. Not shock, not confusion, something worse. Recognition. "You got a filing?" she said quietly. "Came in yesterday afternoon. Something called a shadow survey." I felt my jaw tighten. "Let me see it." She hesitated, just a breath, but enough to tell me she didn't like what she saw. Then she printed it and slid the papers across the counter. The first page hit me like the recoil of a bad shot. A full boundary map of my southern acreage, contour lines, access routes, future utility corridors. And right there, at the bottom corner, next to a perfect little signature block. Owner approval, Thomas Drake. Except it wasn't mine. My name was spelled right, I'll give him that. But the signature looked like someone tried tracing my handwriting from an old checkbook they pulled off Google Images. Marlene whispered, almost afraid of the words. "Tom, whoever filed this claims you approved preliminary access for development." I let out a long breath through my nose. Slow, controlled. "Marlene, you know damn well I didn't sign a thing." She nodded. "I know that, but the county system doesn't." That's when the room got real quiet. The kind of quiet where the humming of old ceiling lights sounds like thunder. I flipped through the rest of the survey. The road leading to my house, labeled Community Shared Access Point. My cattle well, listed as potential hazard to pedestrian traffic. My south fence, marked as temporary boundary marker, subject to adjustment. And then, the worst one, scheduled enforcement review, 72 hours. Marlene swallowed. That notice means, if there's no dispute filed within 3 days, the HOA can request sheriff intervention to secure the access path. Secure the access path. Nice little phrase. What it really means is, they take your gate. I stared at the paper a long moment, ran my thumb across the fake signature. "Who filed it?" I asked. Marlene checked again. Her voice dropped. "Someone from Willow Ridge Preserve. Name listed, Karen Schilling." I closed the file gently, the way a man does when he's deciding between anger and clarity. "Thank you, Marlene." She leaned forward. "Tom, you need to get ahead of this. Folks who pull stunts like this, they don't stop on their own. I know. And if they got the nerve to fake your signature," she shook her head, "they got the nerve for a whole lot worse." I nodded once, firm. "I appreciate the warning." Walking out of that building felt heavier than walking in. The Texas sun hit my face, warm but not friendly, not that morning. I sat in my truck for a long moment, the shadow survey in my lap, listened to the old engine ticking as it cooled. Then I said it out loud, to nobody but myself. 3 days, that's what they think they've got. I folded the papers, started the engine. They don't know I only need one. And with that, I headed back to the ranch, stake in hand, survey in my pocket, and the first real spark of a storm already burning in my chest. I got back to the ranch close to noon. Heat was settling across the fields like a heavy blanket, the kind only Texas can throw over a man. Cicadas buzzing, wind slow, sky bright enough to sting your eyes. I parked by the barn, stepped out, and stood a moment just listening. My land always talks to me if I'm quiet long enough. Some days it whispers, some days it hums. Today, it felt like it was holding its breath. I walked toward the south fence, shadow survey papers folded tight in my back pocket. Every step I took, that fake signature felt like a hot coal against my leg. When trouble's brewing, you can feel it in your ribs before you see it with your eyes. And I felt it then. A soft hum, high-pitched, mechanical, not wind, not cicadas, a sound that didn't belong. I stopped cold, boots planted deep in dirt. The hum got louder. Then I saw it, a black drone, sliding out from behind the cedar stand like a buzzard looking for something fresh to rot. 4 rotors, steady as a surgeon's hand, camera dome hanging beneath it like a glass eye. And it wasn't scanning the land, it wasn't looking at fence lines, it wasn't examining soil, it was pointed straight at me. I stood still, watching it hover. Drone operators always expect you to wave or yell or try to swat the thing like a fly. They're not used to men like me. Men raised where you handle trespass the same way you handle rattlesnakes. Quick, quiet, final. The drone dipped lower, closer, close enough that the dust kicked up from its rotors brushed my shirt. Someone, somewhere, sitting in an air-conditioned room, wearing soft shoes, was zooming in on my face and smiling. I didn't wave, I didn't yell, I just nodded once. Then I turned, walked straight to the house, stepped inside, and opened the gun cabinet. There she was, my old 12-gauge Remington, walnut stock worn smooth from years of honest work. I grabbed a shell of birdshot, light, widespread, perfect for fast-moving pests. I didn't slam the door, didn't curse, didn't hurry. Calm is what scares people more than anger. I stepped back onto the porch. The drone was waiting for me, hovering like it had been rehearsing a confrontation scene for weeks. I raised the shotgun to my shoulder, not rushed, not shaky, just the steady lift a man learns after 50 years of ranching and hunting. The drone tilted slightly, camera lens adjusting, like the operator didn't know whether to retreat or get a closer shot. "I wouldn't," I murmured. The drone dipped lower anyway. So I exhaled once and pulled the trigger. Boom! The blast echoed off the hills hard enough to send a flock of white wings bursting from the oak stand. The drone exploded in midair, a puff of black plastic, wiring, and pride. Pieces rained down across my yard like dark confetti. One rotor spun on the ground for a few seconds, whining like a dying bug. Then it went still. I walked over. The little onboard camera light was still blinking red, half alive, trying to send its final footage home. I set my boot on it, pressed down slow. The light went dark. "No fly zone," I said softly. "Just got enforced." The wind picked up a bit, carrying dust across the yard. The sky, for the first time that day, felt like it belonged to me again. But I knew what I'd just done, and I knew what it meant. Folks who use drones don't like being told no. People who fake signatures like even less being proven wrong. And HOAs, they don't take humiliation kindly. Shooting down that drone wasn't the end of anything. It was the start. I leaned the shotgun against my shoulder, took one last look at the shredded drone pieces, and whispered to myself, "Now, let's see what you try next." And Lord have mercy, they tried. It didn't take long. Trouble never does. I'd barely finished sweeping the last piece of busted drone into a bucket when my phone buzzed. Just one notification at first, then 3, then a dozen. By the time I stepped into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of cold water, my phone looked like it was fixing to overheat from all the alerts lighting up the screen. At first, I figured it was the usual, a couple folks posting sunrise pictures or complaining about deer in their garden beds. But the moment I tapped one of those notifications, my stomach dropped clean through the floor. There I was, frozen in a blurry screenshot, gun in hand, dust swirling behind me. Someone had clipped a frame from God knows when, maybe from their drone, maybe from a long lens hiding in the brush, and slapped it online with a caption big and red enough to look like a crime scene headline. "Armed and dangerous, local rancher threatens community safety." I stood there a long moment, glass of water halfway to my lips. Well, there it was, the first shot of their real war. I scrolled. The comments poured in fast, thick as locusts. "He's unstable. Why does he even have guns? This is why we need stricter rules for rural property owners." Someone called a sheriff. Folks who had never so much as waved to me in the grocery store suddenly had a whole thesis about my character, my land, my intentions, my mental state. But it got worse. Someone posted a video, a heavily edited little masterpiece of HOA creativity. They took an old clip of me burning brush in the pit behind my barn, a perfectly legal burn, done after rain, with a permit, and cut it so tight you'd think I was burning down half the county. They slowed the footage, darkened it, added some ominous music, and put the caption, "Environmental hazard, repeated violations." I set my water down, didn't slam it, just set it down carefully. A second clip rolled in, someone walking past my gate last month, filming from the subdivision road. The sun happened to catch the lid of my metal burn barrel at just the right angle, flaring bright. They posted it as, "Illegal smoke activity caught on camera." I snorted. No smoke, just sunlight. But sunlight doesn't get clicks. Fear does. Then came the big one. A post from the Willow Ridge community page, the digital gossip pit they like to call a safety hub. It read, "Residents should avoid the southern boundary. An aggressive individual brandished a weapon and threatened peaceful survey volunteers today. Sheriff notified. Be cautious. Stay safe." Peaceful volunteers. Yeah, the same volunteers who tried to break my gate at dawn and flew a spy drone over my land. I scrolled a little more, just enough to see the one comment that really told me what they were planning. Should the county review the mental stability of rural landowners near residential zones? Ah, there it was. The real game. Not land, not surveys, not property lines. No, they were trying to paint me as unstable, unfit, a danger to the community, because once you do that, you don't have to take a man's land. The county will do it for you. I set the phone down, took a slow breath. My hands didn't shake. They never do when things get serious. I said it to myself, quiet but steady. "All right, now you're showing your hand." And as the sun dipped behind the ridge, I felt something settle in my chest. Not fear, not anger, but resolve. They wanted a narrative. I was fixing to write them a different one. I wasn't planning on company that night. Hell, I wasn't planning on much of anything beyond heating up leftover brisket and maybe watching the windmill creak in the dark like I always do. But trouble doesn't check calendars, and after the HOA started their smear campaign, I knew trouble wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Right around 10 that night, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally I don't answer unknown calls after dark, but something in my gut told me to pick up. A shaky voice slipped through the speaker. "Mr. Drake, it's Jenna." I knew the name. HOA secretary. The woman who mostly sat quiet during meetings, taking notes, eyes darting around like she knew too much and wished she didn't. "You okay?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "I'm not. I need to talk to you. In person." "Right now?" "Yes, I can't stay at home. Not tonight." Her breath hitched. "They're saying I leaked documents. Karen's furious. They want my phone, my laptop, everything." I straightened in my chair. "Where are you?" "I'm heading toward the West Fix garage, 10 minutes away, maybe less. Her voice cut off. Not hung up. Cut off. A sharp crash blared through the speaker, followed by skidding tires and her terrified gasp. I was out the door before my chair finished rocking. The night was dry, cool, and moonlit enough to see the dust on my boots as I sprinted to the truck. I fired up the engine, gravel spitting, as I tore down the ranch road faster than any man my age ought to be driving. Halfway to West Fix, I saw headlights in the distance, a pair of them jerking sideways like something was wrong. Then I heard it. A scream. Faint, but real. That's when I saw it clearly. Jenna's little sedan was fishtailing across the blacktop, brake lights flashing in panic. Behind her, a big black SUV, the same shape and shine as the one I'd seen testing my gate at dawn. It closed in fast. Too fast. Then it happened. The SUV jerked left, clipped her rear bumper clean at a 45-degree angle, a pit maneuver, police style, or, in this case, HOA private security style. Her car spun like a kicked can, dirt flying in a halo around her headlights. She skidded sideways into the ditch, tires screaming, snapping branches and cattails as she fought for control. I slammed my foot down hard. The engine roared so loud it rattled the steering wheel. Just as the SUV lined up to finish the job, I came in from the opposite side. I didn't brake, didn't hesitate. I put my F-250 straight into its passenger side door. Boom! The impact blasted dust into the air like an explosion. The SUV tilted hard, fishtailed, lost traction, and spun out into the field, plowing a crooked trench through the dry grass. One of its headlights shattered. The other flickered like a hurt animal. Jenna's door popped open. She stumbled out, shaking so badly she could barely stand. I pulled up alongside her. "Get in!" I barked. She climbed in, hands trembling, eyes wide like she'd just seen a ghost wearing Karen Schilling's face. The SUV behind us lurched back onto the road, engine revving, the front bumper hanging loose. "They're coming back!" she cried. "Let 'em," I said, throwing the truck into gear. The road ahead was narrow but familiar as my own breath. I gunned it, and the truck surged forward, dust trailing behind us like smoke. The SUV followed, fast, desperate, but they didn't know this road. I did. I took a hard right, one that looked like a drop-off if you weren't raised within a mile of it. The SUV hesitated, just 1 second, and that was enough. I swung the truck wide, letting my rear wheels kick dust into the air, thick enough to blind a man. The SUV barreled through it, guessing the curve instead of seeing it. Big mistake. Its right tires hit the drainage ditch, not deep, but deep enough to swallow a vehicle that heavy. The whole SUV lurched sideways and slid straight into the water-filled trench with a splash and a metallic groan that echoed into the night. Steam and muddy water erupted around it. "That'll do," I muttered. Jenna sat there shaking, eyes glassy, hands pressed to her mouth. "Are they dead?" she whispered. "No," I said, "just wet and stupid." She let out a half-sob, half-laugh. I turned the truck back toward the ranch road. "You're staying with me tonight," I said firmly. "I'm not leaving you out here where Karen's thugs can try again." She didn't argue, just nodded, staring at the dark road ahead like it was the edge of a cliff. As we drove through the front gate of my ranch, I stepped out to close it behind us, locked it, chained it, slid the steel bar across. Jenna watched from inside the truck, still catching her breath. "Is it safe here?" she asked softly. I looked across my land, the house, the barn, the wide open field under the moonlight. "This place," I said. "This is the last safe spot left between here and the county line." I walked around the truck, opened her door, offered a hand. "Welcome to the only fortress in Texas that Karen Schilling ain't taken." The night was far from over. We both knew that. But for the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't alone. And that changed everything. By sunrise the next morning, Jenna looked like she'd aged 10 years in one night. Didn't sleep much, kept jolting awake every time the wind rattled the barn roof or a nightbird landed on the rail. I understood. When someone tries to run you off the road in the dark, it rearranges the wiring in your nerves. I poured her a cup of coffee, the real strong stuff, the kind that wakes a man up from the inside out. She held it with both hands like she was trying to keep from shaking. "You're safe here," I told her. "HOA don't get to cross my gate." She tried a smile, didn't quite make it. I walked out to check the front fence line. Morning was warm and windless, the kind of Texas quiet that feels like the world's holding its breath before something breaks. Sure enough, there it was. A stack of envelopes shoved between the slats of my gate, rubber banded together, stamped, printed, official looking enough to make a man sigh before he even opened them. Bright red letters across the top read, "Final notice. Enforcement action pending." I didn't need coffee anymore. I carried the stack back to the porch, sat on the top step, and tore the first envelope open. It was written like a police order. Cold, formal, trying way too hard to sound bigger than it was. "Mr. Drake, due to your repeated refusal to comply with Willow Ridge development protocols, the association will secure the south access gate at 9 a.m. tomorrow." Secure. Such a polite word for steal. I opened another letter. This one bolder. "Failure to provide voluntary access will result in third-party enforcement under county development guidelines." Translated into plain English, "We're bringing muscle." A third letter said, "Any obstruction will be considered a safety threat." Safety threat. They really like that phrase. HOA folks use it like salt. Sprinkle it on everything to make it stick. The last envelope was the worst. A full-color printout. My gate circled in bright green, my driveway labeled in bold letters. Shared community access lane, to be opened. To be opened, like it was already a done deal. I sat there a long moment, elbows resting on my knees, the stack of threats heavy in my hands. Behind me, Jenna stepped onto the porch. Her voice was soft. "Is that what I think it is?" "Yep," I said. "They're making their move," she swallowed. "They're going to take your gate? They're going to try." I looked back toward the road, nothing but silence and dust, but I could feel them. The whole subdivision, watching, waiting, measuring how much force they'd need to push a rancher off his land. Jenna sat beside me. "Tom, they won't stop. Karen won't stop. Not until she gets what she wants." I nodded slowly. "I know. What do we do?" I folded every single notice into one thick wad of paper, stood up, walked over to my burn barrel, and dropped the whole stack inside. With a strike of a match, the final notice curled into flame. The wind carried a trail of gray smoke into the morning sky. "What do we do?" I repeated. I turned to her. "We get ready, because tomorrow at 9 they're fixin' to walk into the wrong damn ranch." She stared toward the horizon. "You think they'll come?" "Oh," I said, adjusting my hat. "They'll come, and they'll bring everything they've got." I looked back at my gate. Old cedar, rusty hinges, stubborn as the men who built it. "They want that gate so bad," I muttered. "They're gonna have to take it out of my hands." 9 didn't sneak up on me. I'd been watching the minute hand crawl there since sunrise. Jenna sat inside with a blanket around her shoulders, sipping coffee, like it was the only thing holding her together. I told her to stay put, doors locked, phone ready. Me? I stood on the porch, old denim shirt, boots tied tight, Remington in hand, quiet as stone. Right on time, the sound started. Deep, thunderous, mechanical. A diesel engine rolling down the county road like a beast waking from sleep. Then came the SUVs, 3 of them, white, shiny, polished like show dogs. They whipped into formation outside my fence, doors popping open like synchronized swimmers. 5 HOA inspectors stepped out wearing neon vests bright enough to blind a man. clipboards tucked under their arms like they were weapons. Behind them, a lawyer climbed out, the same fella from the day before, wiping dust from his suit sleeve like it personally offended him. But the real star of the parade, the bulldozer, a massive yellow Komatsu rolling behind them, bucket raised high, metal clanking like a war drum. There it was, their plan. Simple, ugly, smash through my gate, claim the land, call it development progress. I stepped down the porch steps slow, boots crunching, dust curling around my ankles. The inspector in sunglasses waved his clipboard. "Mr. Drake, you are obstructing a scheduled county-supported access adjustment. Please step away from the gate," and I raised my hand. He shut up mid-sentence. "Son," I said calmly, "you so much as scratch that gate, and the next thing that gets scratched is your reputation." He puffed up like a rooster in a small yard. "This is an authorized action. We have jurisdiction." "You got nothing," I said. Then I nodded toward the bulldozer. "But he's got a whole lot of stupid in that bucket." The lawyer tried stepping forward. "This is legal. We sent warnings. We gave notice." "You gave trash," I said, "and I burned every piece of it." Their faces twitched. "Good." The bulldozer operator, a kid maybe 21, revved the engine. He looked nervous. Hands tight on the controls, eyes darting between me and the inspector, shouting directions at him. I took one step closer to the gate. "You sure you want to do this, boy?" I asked. The inspector barked, "Proceed! Open the access route!" That engine roared. The bulldozer lurched forward, bucket rising just a little higher, and that was all I needed to see. I lifted the Remington. No rush, no panic, just a man doing what he's done 1,000 times. I chambered a slug, a single, heavy piece of lead built for breaking through things that shouldn't be broken. The click echoed across the field like a church bell. The inspectors froze. The lawyer stopped breathing. The bulldozer operator's eyes went wide. I didn't aim at the kid, didn't even aim at the bucket. I aimed at the hydraulic line under the arm and pulled the trigger. Boom! The slug hit dead center, a perfect echoing thump of metal meeting metal. Then, hydraulic fluid sprayed out in a wild jet, shooting 20 feet in the air. Hot oil rained down across the dirt, turning the ground slick and black. The bulldozer coughed, lurched, then sagged like a dying bull. The bucket crashed into the dirt with a heavy metallic groan. Dead. Instantly dead. The operator leapt out the side door so fast he landed on his hands and knees. I took one more step forward. "Next slug," I said, "goes through the windshield." You could have heard a fly sneeze. The inspectors backed up like I was radioactive. One dropped his clipboard. Another tripped over his own feet, trying to hide behind the lawyer. The lawyer raised both hands, voice cracking clean in half. "Mr. Drake, let's take a moment. Let's all calm down." "Calm?" I said. "I am calm. Y'all don't want to see me excited." One of the inspectors squeaked, You just disabled county equipment." I shrugged. "That machine crossed my boundary. I enforced my own." The wind blew gently across the field. A hawk circled overhead. Even nature seemed to pause to watch the scene. I pointed the barrel down toward the dirt, not at them, just near enough to remind everyone what direction trouble traveled in. "Load up," I said. "Get off my fence line, and tell Karen Schilling she's about a half-inch from starting a war she ain't ready for." The bulldozer operator scrambled toward a truck. The inspectors grabbed whatever pride they had left and piled into their SUVs. The lawyer jogged back to his car, slamming the door like he feared the air might bite him. Engines fired, dust kicked up, and in under 40 seconds, the entire enforcement squad fled down the road like the devil himself was chewing their tires. Jenna cracked the front door open behind me. "They left?" "For now," I said, breathing steady. I slung the shotgun over my shoulder and walked back toward the house. "They'll be back," I added. "People like that don't quit after losing a toy." She swallowed hard. "What do we do?" I opened the door, paused, and looked back at the road they'd vanished down. "We get ready for their next mistake," I said, "and trust me, they're about to make a big one." That night, the ranch didn't feel the same. Not unsafe, just waiting, like the air itself knew something was coming down the road. Jenna stayed inside, lights low, curtains drawn. She'd barely touched dinner. Every sound, wind in the gutters, barn tin popping in the cool air, made her flinch like it was a gunshot. I didn't blame her. Fear changes the speed of sound. I made my rounds across the property, checked the gates, tightened the chains, set lanterns where the yard was too dark, and made sure my old irrigation control box still worked. Folks think irrigation is just hoses and water timers, but mine, built it myself 30 years ago, tinkered with it every summer, and last year, after coyotes kept sneaking near the hen house, I added a special modification, a pressure-fed capsicum canister tied right into the sprinkler valves. A homemade pepper spray perimeter. I never figured I'd use it on people, but HOA security ain't people I'd invite to Sunday dinner. Around 11, the night settled into one of those heavy silences where even the crickets hush. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching the road, and I heard it. First as a faint rumble, then clearer. Tires, several of them, moving slow. Headlights appeared beyond the ridge, 3 sets. Not the white SUVs from earlier. These were black, tinted. No plates I could read. They rolled up the road quiet, too quiet for vehicles that big. I stepped inside and grabbed the Remington. Jenna stood at the hallway corner, pale, clutching her phone. "They're here, aren't they?" she whispered. "Get to the barn loft," I said. "Stay down. Don't open the door unless you hear my voice." She nodded fast, eyes wide, and disappeared into the dark. I stepped back outside. The 3 black SUVs stopped 20 feet from my gate. Doors opened in unison. Out came 6 men, all wearing dark tactical vests, utility belts, gloves, and boots too clean to belong to ranch hands. Not cops, not deputies, hired muscle. One of them lifted something, a pepperball gun rig, CO2 canister glinting. Another had a Kevlar shield. A third carried zip ties big enough to hog-tie a steer. The biggest one shouted, "Tom Drake, step away from the structure. You are harboring a person interfering with a lawful development investigation." Lawful. There's that word again. HOAs use it the way kids use glitter, everywhere, and it never means anything. I raised my voice, nice and steady. "You're trespassing, you're armed, and you're about 5 steps away from making the worst mistake of your career." The leader signaled with 2 fingers. 2 of his men approached the fence. I waited until they crossed the line, the one I'd marked in my mind, 10 yards from the house. Then I clicked the irrigation remote in my pocket. A hiss sounded from behind the barn. Then another. And then the yard exploded in a cloud of burning mist. A wall of pepper spray blasted from the sprinkler heads, wide, bright, and hot as hellfire. The men didn't even have time to curse. One dropped to his knees, clutching his face. Another staggered backward, blind, hitting the SUV behind him. 2 more tried to run, coughing, gasping, stumbling over each other. The leader screamed, "Masks! Masks! Put your damn masks on!" Too late. They were already drowning in it. I stepped forward, using the chaos like a curtain, took the butt of the Remington and cracked the first man across the ribs. Clean, precise, enough to put him down without killing him. The second lunged at me through the pepper fog. I sidestepped, grabbed his vest collar, and drove my elbow into his jaw. He went down hard, groaning, spitting curses with every breath. The yard smelled like a chili factory exploded. Tears streamed down my face too, but I'd been hit with worse working cattle in wildfire smoke. One of the security men managed to stagger to his feet. He lifted his pepper ball gun blindly, firing wild. The rounds burst against my porch, staining the boards orange. I charged. He didn't see me until I was right on top of him. I knocked the gun from his hands, kicked his legs out, and planted a boot on his chest. "Stay down," I growled. "You ain't in your subdivision anymore." Another came swinging a baton. Big fella, strong, but city strong, not ranch strong. I caught his wrist, twisted hard. He howled, baton dropping. I shoved him backward into the mud where he stayed. The leader, blind and coughing, stumbled toward his SUV, trying to get away from the spray. I walked up behind him, tapped the barrel of the Remington against the back of his vest. He froze. I didn't point it at him. Didn't need to. "Leave the property," I said quietly. "All of you. Now." He swallowed so hard I could hear it over the engines. We'll be back," he rasped, voice cracking from the pepper. I leaned in. "Bring more men," I said. I could use the exercise. He scrambled into the SUV. The other 2, half blind and wheezing, followed. The engines roared, tires spun. The convoy tore down the road in a trail of dust and shame. Silence returned, not peaceful, but clean. I wiped my eyes, caught my breath, and headed to the barn. Jenna came down from the loft slow, trembling. "Tom, were they trying to take me?" "Yes," I said. "No question." She hugged herself tight. "I told you, Karen wants the USB." "And she isn't getting it," her voice cracked. "They're getting desperate." I nodded. "Good," I said. "Desperate people make mistakes, and they just made a big one tonight." I stepped outside the barn, looked at the empty road, and felt the storm building inside me. "If they want a war," I muttered, "I'll show 'em what one looks like." By the time the sun crawled back over the ridge, my yard looked like the aftermath of a bar fight between a chili cannon and a SWAT team. Orange pepper stains dotted the dirt like someone had tried to paint the place. 3 abandoned batons lay in the grass. One tactical vest hung from my fence post where a man had ripped it off while choking on pepper mist. And right at the property line, the crushed imprint of an SUV's bumper where one of them had panicked and backed straight into my old water trough. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. Around 7:45, I heard tires, a sound I could tell apart from any HOA caravan. County tires, heavier, dustier, driven by someone who doesn't mind scratching the paint. A pair of tan sheriff trucks rolled into view, lights off, engines rumbling low. Mark Renner stepped out first, big shoulders, gray at the temples, walked like a man who learned patience in hard ways. He took one long look at the yard, at the broken gear, at the pepper-splattered gravel. Then he slowly took off his hat and scratched the bridge of his nose. "Tom," he said, "tell me you did not start a war before breakfast." I sipped my coffee. "Didn't start one," I said. "Just finished an inning." He huffed a single laugh, the tired kind. Behind him, the rookie deputy, same nervous kid from the shotgun incident, just stared around like he'd walked into a movie set. "What am I looking at?" Mark asked. 6 hired security contractors trespassed on my land," I said. "They attempted to abduct Jenna, came in after midnight, armed." Mark's jaw tightened. "You got proof?" I pointed toward the barn. "Cameras caught everything. Jenna saw it all, and you'll find their pepperball casings all over the place. 2 of them dropped ID badges while choking. The rookie bent down, picked up one badge between 2 fingers like it might explode. "Sheriff, this says they work for a private enforcement firm out of Houston. Not local." "No surprise there," I murmured. "Karen likes hiring men who don't know the meaning of the word boundary." Mark walked a slow circle through the battered yard. "You hurt anybody too bad?" he finally asked. "No broken skulls," I said. "Maybe a few bruised egos." He stopped, turned, and gave me the look. You know the one, half exasperation, half admiration, all Texas. "Tom, I told you last time, call me first." I shrugged. They weren't exactly sending a wedding invitation. Mark exhaled hard. "Jenna inside?" "Safe," I said. "Shaken but safe." He nodded, gaze sharpening. "This isn't HOA-level nonsense anymore. They crossed 3 criminal lines last night. Trespass, assault, attempted kidnapping. And if they came armed, they did." "Then that's 4. The rookie stepped closer. "Sheriff, should we call in state investigators?" Mark took a long moment before answering. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, I think we're past county paperwork now." He motioned for me to follow him to his truck. "Got something for you," he said. He opened the passenger door, rummaged in a metal lockbox, and pulled out a padded evidence bag. Inside it, a shattered drone camera, the one I had shot earlier in the week. "We recovered this off County Road 19, Mark said. "Registered to Willow Ridge Development Committee. They reported it lost." He raised an eyebrow. "Lost, huh?" I smirked. "I enforced a no-fly zone." Mark didn't smile, but he didn't frown either. "Tom," he said, voice dropping, "they're escalating, fast. Someone with money is pushing this from behind the curtain." "Karen?" I asked. "No," he said. "Karen doesn't have this kind of pull. She's just loud enough to look important." I crossed my arms. "So, what now?" Mark leaned in, resting one hand on the open truck door. "Now," he said, "you let me handle the law, and you keep your powder dry. Because whatever they tried last night," he glanced at the bent fence, the pepper-stained dirt, the abandoned gear, "they're not finished." I stared out toward the road, where the dust of the fleeing SUVs had settled into the morning stillness. No, I said quietly, they aren't. And neither was I. Sheriff Mark didn't stay long, but he stayed long enough to understand one truth. This wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This was a coordinated offense, planned, funded, driven by someone who wanted my land so badly they were willing to break half the Texas Penal Code to get it. When Mark finally holstered his notebook and shut the back of his truck, his voice had lost every trace of patience. Tom, gather your evidence, all of it, today. I'll file my report, but you need a lawyer who eats this kind of corruption for breakfast. I nodded. One step ahead of you. Good, he said, because I got a call from the county office right before I drove out here. I raised an eyebrow. That fast? He nodded. HOA filed a complaint first thing this morning, accusing you of running an armed militia on your property. I laughed once, low and bitter. Militia? It's just me, a shotgun, and a woman who barely slept last night. Mark didn't smile. They're laying groundwork, Tom, making you look unpredictable, dangerous. I rubbed a hand across my jaw. Yeah, I've seen him do that before. Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice. You hold your temper, let the evidence talk, and for God's sake, don't give them any more ammo. He climbed into his truck, gave me a long look, and drove off, dust dragging behind him like a warning. Inside the house, Jenna sat at my kitchen table, shoulders tight, eyes red. Not from crying, from exhaustion, adrenaline, and fear biting at her nerve endings. She lifted her head when I stepped in. Is it over? No, I said gently, but it's turning. She swallowed. Tom, they won't stop. Karen, the board, the developers, someone hires pushing them. I know. And when they figure out I'm here, they already figured it out, I said quietly. That's why last night happened. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking. I poured her a fresh cup of coffee. You're safe. They're not touching you again, not while you're on my land. After a long breath, she finally nodded. Okay, then let's finish what they started. We walked to the barn together, where all my camera feeds ran through an old monitor. I pulled the hard drives, labeled them, bagged them. Every clip, every angle, every trespasser's face. Jenna watched in silence for a while, until she finally said, I want to tell you something. I paused. Her voice trembled. The HOA, they're not just expanding. They're not just building houses. There's a corporate contract, a big one. The developer, Cypress Ridge Capital, they already promised buyers that access road, your access road. I stared at her. And Karen? She guaranteed it, Jenna whispered. Said she had you handled, that you were a stubborn old rancher who would fold under pressure. I slowly leaned back. Well, I said, she misjudged the rancher. I called my attorney next, Avery Collins, a man who could dismantle a forged document using nothing but a pen cap and a raised eyebrow. He picked up on the first ring. Tom, tell me you're calling because you finally got something I can use. I've got video of trespassing, assault, attempted kidnapping, and a bulldozer dying of unnatural causes. On the other end, Avery exhaled sharply. That's actually very helpful. Thought you'd say that. Bring everything to my office within the hour. And, Tom, yeah? Do not post, do not talk to reporters, and do not let that HOA bait you into looking unstable, I smirked. Too late, they already tried. Let me guess, Avery said. Showed up with a lawyer, maybe 5 inspectors, maybe a bulldozer? I blinked. Avery, how'd you know? He was silent a moment. Because, Tom, they tried the exact same stunt on a man over in Caddo County last year. He didn't fight back. They steamrolled him, took half his land. I gripped the phone harder. Not happening here. I didn't think so, he said. That's why I took your case. As I hung up, Jenna moved beside me. What now? I lifted the folder of evidence. Now, I said, we take this fight out of the pasture. I looked toward the ridge where the HOA SUVs had fled hours earlier, and into a courtroom where they can't hide behind neon vests or bulldozers. Jenna nodded slowly. One thing's for sure, she said. What's that? She lifted her chin, finding her strength again. Tomorrow, they're going to wish they never picked a fight with a rancher who keeps receipts. The courthouse smelled like old cedar, floor polish, and the kind of history that doesn't care who you are. Jenna walked beside me, clutching the folder Avery gave her. Her steps were shaky, but her chin stayed high. Avery moved with purpose, coat unbuttoned, sleeves slightly rolled, like a man about to carve a Thanksgiving turkey made of pure corruption. Sheriff Mark was already inside, arms folded, expression unreadable. Karen and her entourage sat across the aisle. 5 inspectors, the same lawyer from my gate, 2 board members, and a bulldozer operator who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. Karen acted calm, but her foot tapped 5 times a second. A woman only does that when she knows the devil's coming for the bill. The bailiff called Willow Ridge Preserve Homeowners Association versus Thomas E. Drake. The judge halted everyone with one raised palm. Judge Raleigh McClure, 71, silver mustache, boots under the robe, a man who could spot nonsense from 15 counties away. "Let's keep this clean," he said. "I skipped breakfast and I get cranky when folks waste my time." Karen's lawyer stood first, slick hair, shiny suit, shiny confidence. "Your Honor, the defendant has repeatedly endangered community personnel, brandished firearms, destroyed survey equipment, and obstructed authorized development." Judge McClure held up a single finger. "Son, did you rehearse that in the mirror?" A few people chuckled. Karen did not. "Your Honor," the lawyer pushed, "the HOA has full jurisdiction to—" "No," the judge said, "you don't. Not 1 inch outside your subdivision. Not 1 blade of grass on Mr. Drake's ranch." The lawyer swallowed hard. Avery stood. "Your Honor, if I may, we'd like to present Exhibit A." Lights dimmed. Avery rolled the footage. The bulldozer pushing forward, the inspectors trespassing, the lawyer threatening. Me standing calm with the shotgun pointed sky high. Judge McClure tapped a knuckle on his bench. "Huh," he muttered. "Looks to me like Mr. Drake's shotgun is having a nice, peaceful morning." Karen's lawyer sputtered. He intimidated our personnel." Judge raised the finger again. "Son, if that shotgun was intimidating anyone, your men wouldn't have run faster than a Baptist from a bar tab." The court erupted. Even Sheriff Mark smirked. Avery laid the forged expansion map on the evidence table. "This," he said, "was mailed to my client. It shows Mr. Drake's land listed as community property, sold, allocated, and color-coded, weeks before he was even approached." The judge stared at the map like it was moldy meat. "Ms. Schilling," he said slowly, "what in the name of common sense am I looking at?" Karen's lips tightened. "That is a preliminary concept, a misunderstanding." Avery didn't give her space to breathe. "Your Honor, we also have witness testimony that this map was used to solicit early buyers and guarantee access across Mr. Drake's private property." The judge looked over his glasses. "Ms. Schilling, did you pre-sell land that didn't belong to you?" Karen hesitated. Avery struck. "Your Honor, allow me to call Jenna Holt to the stand." Jenna walked up, small, scared, but steel underneath. She told everything: the fake orders, the pressure, the SUV that rammed her car, the attempt to silence her, the harassment, the night attack. When she finished, the courtroom was dead still. Judge McClure leaned back. "Well," he said, "I've heard some foolish behavior in my years, but this right here, this is a casserole of stupid I've never tasted before." The gavel came down once. "Case dismissed, with prejudice." Down again. "HOA Willow Ridge will cease all actions against Mr. Drake effective immediately." Down again, louder. "All trespass, fraud, false reporting, and intimidation evidence will be forwarded to the district attorney." He pointed the gavel at Karen like it was a loaded revolver. "And ma'am, if you or your clipboard parade step so much as a toe onto this man's land again, I'll personally walk the sheriff out there to teach you what trespass laws are for." The gavel slammed. Court adjourned. Karen turned white. Her lawyer sagged. The inspectors looked at the floor like schoolboys who broke the wrong window. Jenna let out a breath she'd been holding for 3 days. Avery packed his files with the satisfied grunt of a man who just butchered a corrupt empire. Sheriff Mark clapped my shoulder. "Knew you'd hold your ground." Back home, the light was golden, quiet, the kind of quiet you earn. I walked to my front gate, the same gate the bulldozer tried to break, the same gate those inspectors swarmed, the same gate my family built by hand. I lifted the latch, heard the clean metal click. The sound was better than any gavel. Jenna stood behind me. "It's over?" I rested my hand on the cedar plank. "It's done," I said. This land stays mine. The wind rustled the grass, soft as applause. And for the first time in days, the ranch breathed easy again.